The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to give you a percent deposit bonus up to $1,000. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It's currently Thursday afternoon, roughly noon Eastern on January 16th. I'm Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the actual third round of the Australian Open. On the men's side, so we're going to break down some of the key matches. Same exact game plan as the second round episode. We're not going to cover all the matches. We're going to cover most of them. Some do not have lines up yet, so just keep that in mind. Point is, though, we are going to be getting into the recap of the second round first, then getting into the third round, and then the lock and dog picks at the end of the show. Now, before we get into the actual once again, breakdown of the third round. Do want to remind you once again that you can show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, and remind you to also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, remind you to check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. All high quality, all affordable. Recommend getting yourself something. Plus, a reminder for the actual network that we do have all of the podcasts available easily on the SGPN app, free to download on the App Store. Download it to get instant access to all of our free picks and podcast. Starting off, though, with the actual recap of the last episode. The bad news is we did not sweep again. The good news is we still had a decent episode. Ended up losing the lock, though. We actually lost both the legs of the parlay, which really does not matter because that means that we lost either way. Ended up having Sinner in straight sets, who finally lost a set to School Cat, and we also ended up having her catch on the money line as he got buried by Kekmanovic in straight sets. So not even close on the lock there. The Hurkacz straight sets loss kind of shocked me. Thought that he would end up, I'd say, at least winning a set. I think he'd get buried. As for Sinner, he got off to a slow start. School Cat was serving volleying, and it kind of caught Sinner off guard, but then he settled in and he dominated the last three sets. Either way, though, picked up a loss there with the lock, but for the dog, nice and easy winner. We did have a two-pick parlay, had the over 3.5 sets in the Draper-Kokkinakis match and the over 3.5 sets in the Mensik and Ruud match, and that paid out a plus 133 that ended up cashing, as both matches were pretty, I'd say, straightforward when it comes to distance. You saw Draper and Kokkinakis go 5, because of course they did. Kokkinakis always goes 5. He choked it, though. Could have potentially won in the fourth. Blew it serving for the match, and ended up losing in 5. A classic Kokkinakis loss. As for Mensik and Ruud, Mensik looked good, but did have one slip up there in the second set, as Ruud ended up winning that set, and then he got buried in the final two. Not a problem, though. Nice win there for the dog. I would say overall, for the actual I'd say matches in particular for the, I don't want to say the word lean, so I'll say for the predictions we had that were not in the lock and dog picks, overall fine. I feel like it wasn't like an amazing episode, but I think it was fine overall. If you ended up backing, I'd say some of the opinions you cashed, some of the other ones lost, but kind of in the middle. Either way, though, I'd say a pretty decent episode. Look for a better episode here on a Thursday. I see in the comment section, Matt, I'm not being kidnapped, so I am fine, believe it or not. So thank you for my, I'd say for concern about my well-being. So thank you for asking me if I'm okay. Ian, just saw you. Nice seeing you again. Hopefully you do enjoy the show. Anyway, time to get into the actual second round recap. We ended up having a couple of marathon matches. We ended up seeing in the first day. Most notably, ended up seeing a marathon match between Makic and Opelka. That went 5. Makic ended up winning that one. Thought he would win. Thought he'd probably win in 4, though. Won in 5. You had Boyer, who beat... sorry, that was actually the round prior. For the late match, though, you had Vukic, who ended up beating Korda in 5 with a 7-5 in the final set. Normally, I would roast Korda, but I don't think I'm going to, because Korda was off an elbow injury, did win a title... or sorry, he lost in the final to Felix, and then he had to play in the Australian Open. So he really, I don't want to say rushed back, but he played a lot of tennis fresh off an injury. So I'm not shocked that Korda lost a 5-set marathon after barely playing much tennis prior to it. So normally I would roast Korda. I'm not really going to. I'm just going to give it a pass for now. It's still pretty funny to see Korda lose early, but either way, there is some excuse built in, so I'm not going to roast him too hard. But either way, nice win for Vukic, as he ended up winning in 5 sets in that one. Besides that, ended up seeing Thompson get buried by Borges, which is kind of a surprise. Ended up seeing Baena beat Duckworth in straight sets. Joker won in 4. Keeps dropping sets, but keeps winning. Fees did win in 4. We were right about the over 3.5 sets, though, in that one. I saw Mutet beat Papiron in a slight upset there. Shapo ended up winning in 4 sets against Agut, and yeah, that was actually, no, that was the first round, because Shapo ended up losing to Musetti in the second. But the point is, nothing that was really that shocking, I would say. Alcaraz killed Nishioka, not a shock whatsoever. You saw, really, once again, not much drama, I should say, in the first, I'd say, day of action. Then you had some competitive tennis as well, with the Draper match being an absolute war. Kogonakis served for the match, got broken to love, and then Draper ended up winning in 5. Classic Kogonakis choke job, so pretty standard. If you see him in a major, you might as well bet 5 sets in almost every match he's in, and Kogonakis really delivers most of the time. Entertaining, but eventually he did fall apart as Draper won in the final set 6-3. Then you had Felix, who fell apart, won the first 2 sets via breaker, and then lost eventually in 5. Match was around 5 hours, but either way, nice win by Fekina, who got the job done there. Thought it'd be a war, and it was. Thought Felix would win, though. That didn't happen. But nice win there for Fekina. It's kind of the same boat as Korda, though, without the injury. Felix played a bunch of tennis, did win a title, and then ended up losing in the second round. So normally, I would roast him. I probably still can, because he blew a 2-0 lead. But the point is, Felix definitely, I'd say losing early in a Grand Slam, not a shock. Fekina, though, very talented, still a head case, but a nice comeback there from 2-0 down. Besides that, Paul beat Nishikori in 4 sets. Not really much to take away from that one. Nishikori won the first set, and then his body kind of betrayed him, which is not a shock, as he's up there in years, had some injuries, won a 5-set marathon in the first round against Montero, and Paul just seemed to wear him out physically as he won the final 3 sets, only dropping 4 games. So the final 3 sets were not very close, but Nishikori still had a nice first-round win, and he won the first set, but his body just didn't have it. And Paul made it physical, and Nishikori's body betrayed him. Simple as that. Kekmanovic beat Hurkacz in straight sets. Good win for him. Gashanov beat Diallo in 4, so our long shot, I'd say quarter winner, is still alive there for the outright. Bonfi beat Altmaier in straight sets. You saw Musetti beat Chapo in straight sets. Shelton beat Busta. Thought he'd win in 4. He did, so nice win there. You ended up seeing Mutet beat Kruger as well. Fritz beat Garin. Got a pretty, I'd say, scary injury moment there in the first set, but he was fine, as he only dropped 3 games in the entire match. Damn, Green got his ass kicked. I saw Giron outlast Echeverry. That had a 5-set marathon written all over it, and Giron got the job done there in 5. Besides that, Zverev continues to look good. I was concerned about the injury entering the event with the bicep, but he apparently looks great. So we'll see how that goes. But either way, overall, pretty fun a set of matches there. I skipped over the Mensik match. Pretty straightforward, though. Barud did have the 1 set where he showed up, and that was all we needed, as we ended up getting the over 3.5 sets into that parlay. So moving on to the matches we ended up seeing on Thursday morning. Mickelson beat McCabe in straight sets. You saw Morozin beat Tiafoe in 5. Once again, I would normally roast Tiafoe for losing early in a Grand Slam. I'm not going to do it this time. He was puking and he was exhausted in the first round against Rinderknech. He outlasted him there. It was really a tough spot for Tiafoe after expending that much energy in the first round. He had nothing left in the tank. And the fact is, he still went up 2-1, but you're always concerned with the tired legs in the weather in Australia. Can players hold up the round after? And Tiafoe, in reality, really just couldn't hold up physically, and he got buried 6-1 in the final set. So I'm going to let it slide on Tiafoe. He showed a lot of heart and a lot of guts in the first round win against Rinderknech, and he just didn't have much left in the tank. So nice win by Morozin, who definitely got the job done there. I see some questions here. Just in general, I see Insano asking about correlation with 5-setters potentially losing in the next round. The issue you have there is a lot of matches have actually gone the distance. I believe it's the second most 5-set matches in the first 2 rounds in the history of the Australian Open. So you have seen a lot of guys who have gone the distance. I think the correlation would be dropping sets. I don't know about losing matches as a whole, but I think you're looking at a correlation of guys maybe even dropping sets in particular to conserve energy. I think that's the main correlation for me. So guys that tend to go 5 sets in the previous round, I think tend to go 4 or 5 in the next round, because they are, once again, trying to conserve energy for various sets. So they might punt a set or 2, which might result in a potentially a longer match moving forward. So keep that in mind in general. I see Johnny mentioning Tianemi, and I'll mention that in a second. A point is, though, you saw a 5-setter in the Tiafoe-Morozin match, 5-setter in the Sonego and Fonseca match. Fun match there. Sonego, bunch of talent, but he really just can't be consistent enough. But he found his gear in the 5th set. He was great in that 5th set, and he got the job done eventually in 5. No shame there for Fonseca, though, who had a good, I'd say, overall showing in his first Grand Slam, beating Rublev and then losing in 5 in the second round. I saw Rune, who beat Berrettini in 4. Nice win there for Rune. I thought he'd win in about 4 or 5, and that's what happened, so nice win there for him. Berrettini, imagine how good he'd actually be if he could even hit an average backhand, damn, his backhand's still terrible. It's crazy how Berrettini is like a very muscular guy. He's actually like tall. He's got muscle. He can hit the ball very hard on the forehand and the serve. No backhand at all, which is just really kind of insane to think about. It's like he skipped part of the training and just never got the backhand tutelage. But that's why he loses to top-tier guys. It's because he can't hit a backhand, and that's really going to get him into trouble for a lot of the actual matches against top-tier guys. But he made a Grand Slam final. He's made a bunch of Grand Slam quarters. Still can't hit a backhand, and either way, Rune beat him in 5. And then you had Sinner, who ended up beating Skullcat in 4. And you had the match of the tournament so far, which was Tien, who ended up beating Medvedev in an upset in a final set breaker, the only final set breaker of the event so far. What a match. Took about 4 hours and 50, I think, 4 hours and 45. Medvedev looked like he had the match won. Tien ended up having a match point, actually, in the third set, but it was on Medvedev's serve in the breaker, and Medvedev ended up hitting an ace. But either way, the point is Medvedev won the third set, then you figured, all right, Medvedev finally is going to figure it out. He'll win one of the fourth set 6-1. So you just think that Tien's dead at that point. And then you had an absolute war in the fifth set, where it felt like every point took about 20 shots, and Tien was up a break. Then Medvedev got the boomerang, and then he ended up seeing Medvedev get the break to serve it out, actually, at 6-5. And he blew it. You saw Tien play a phenomenal return game, and he got the break back to force the super breaker. Then Medvedev had a pretty easy put-away volley in the 7-6 spot, and then eventually kind of blew the volley, giving Tien a free pass, and then Tien ended up winning from that point forward. So Medvedev, I would say, had a pretty interesting match where he was being outplayed, then he found his groove, then he was down a break, then he came back, then he was up a break in the fifth. The fifth set was an absolute circus. If you want very compelling tennis, watch that fifth set. But either way, Tien showed a lot of toughness physically and mentally because he could have given up in some spots. Had a 5-set marathon in the first round. He was able to show some overall stamina. Tien, though, once again, we made a lot of money backing him in the next-gen finals. The kid's good. His serve's not great. I think his serve's going to be a potential problem for him against top-tier competition because it's really weak. But Tien has a lot of variety, a lot of consistency, and he can definitely outlast, I'd say, star players when it comes to long rallies. The serve, though, is the one thing that needs to be addressed for him to, I'd say, explode onto the scene. But Tien is really, really good. So hopefully we'll end up seeing him continue to make some runs in the future, and hopefully he's got some stamina left for the next round. Either way, though, a point is you are looking at Tien, who pulled off the upset of the tournament in a really phenomenal match, which was a phenomenal fifth set. Medvedev, it's really difficult to fully evaluate where he's at right now, I'd say, in his overall tennis compared to other star players, because he made the final in the Australian Open last year. He hasn't won a title in over a year. Of course, we've seen him lose in many Grand Slam finals. He did win the one U.S. Open. But the issue remains, is he starting to lose his window? He might be. He really might be. Because when you factor in Joker, who is still a threat, I guess, if you want to make the argument, you have Alcaraz, who owns Medvedev. You have Sinner, who, of course, is right now the best hardcourt player in the world. Medvedev, I'll put it this way, if he did not win another Grand Slam, I would not be shocked. He's made a bunch of finals. He's found ways to get through. But Zverev is even still dangerous. Not saying he'd win a Grand Slam, but Zverev could beat him in a 5-setter potentially. Medvedev's window might have passed. So that is a problem that he runs into. The serve just isn't good enough. Maybe it's just the first serve percentage, but it feels like Medvedev used to be holding at a much higher clip, and now he finds himself into some tough, I'd say, service games. Double faulting still an issue, and it just seems like Medvedev may have, I don't want to say missed his window officially, but it feels that way. And you have other guys coming up, maybe even like Fonseca in the next couple of years. You have a couple of very talented teenagers who are also dangerous. I do wonder if Medvedev is going to win another title or win another Grand Slam, I mean. I'm skeptical. I'll put it that way. Either way, though, that's going to wrap it up for the second round. Time to move on into the actual third round preview. Before that, though, want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings because the playoffs are here. Playoffs are about the playoffs. You bet we are. Get on the action. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning playoff games. And a reminder, you can bet big on touchdowns on DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook's app or even the website and make your picks. Reminder, they have a promo going on right now. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to win $2 in bonus bets instantly. It's a great deal, though. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and a reminder, use code SGP. It's code SGP for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished recapping the second round. Time to move on into the third round of the Australian Open. So, starting off with the first match we're going to talk about. A reminder, we are going to be skipping some actual matches for the lock and dog pick. So if you are waiting for some key matches, I may or may not have saved them for the end of the show. Starting off with the first match, though, you have Paul against Baena. Now, Paul's a massive favorite, as he probably should be. Paul is around minus 650. Baena's around plus 500. For the set spread here, you have minus 2.5 for Paul. You have plus 2.5 for Baena, around minus 125 for Baena, though, for the plus 2.5. For the actual spread, you have minus 7.5 for Paul. You have plus 7.5 for Baena. For the over-under in games, you have 33.5. Now, Paul has been dropping sets. Had a 5-set marathon against O'Connell in the first round. Then he ended up beating Nishikori in 4 sets. He looked pretty good, though, in the final 3. Now, the issue, though, you run into is that Baena's been good, actually. Ended up winning in straight sets against Duckworth, won in a 4 against Tabilo. He's been competitive on hardcourt, which is kind of surprising because he was not a good hardcourt player most of his career. Now, they faced off in a Grand Slam in the past, and Baena actually won. It was dated, though. Faced off in the U.S. Open in 2021, and Baena did win in 4. First glance, I think the price is way too affordable on Baena plus 2.5 sets. I'm not saying that Paul's going to lose the match, but Paul drops sets left and right. It feels like Paul kind of has a mental lapse for about half an hour in some of these matches, and he has done so in the first 2 rounds of this event. So I think you're looking at what should be a decent spot for Baena to potentially find an opening for at least half an hour to win a set. But I think that Paul being minus 105 in straight sets is way too, I'd say, that's just a bad price for me. I think that should be, in my opinion, closer to plus money. I think that they're expecting Paul to bury the guy. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Paul should win, obviously. Do I trust Paul to keep, I'd say, mental focus for a full 2 hours? I don't. I think Baena is going to keep points in play. I think he'll be able to extend rallies. I think you might end up seeing him force a couple of mistakes from Paul. But the idea that Paul's going to automatically bury this guy when he's dropped at least 1 set in each of the first 2 matches here, I think is pretty wishful thinking. I'll go with Baena plus 2.5 sets here. I think it's a very, very large spread at 7.5. I think that Baena can keep it interesting. If Paul wins by margin, I'd be shocked. No. But based on price, I don't see any value in Paul. I think the argument is that the market is actually too heavily in favor of Paul. So I'm going to go with Baena to be a little bit different. Giving Baena, once again, plus 2.5 sets here at plus 125. Not saying he's going to win, but I think that the price is too affordable on him to win a set. Like Paul, at the end of the day, could win the first 2 sets, drop the third. Who cares? Will win the 4th. I think that's a possibility too. So give me Baena, once again, plus 2.5 sets here, or the over 3.5 sets at minus 105 as my main plays for that one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Fernley against Zverev. Now this one's interesting because Fernley's had a good run here. For the actual match results here so far, Zverev's been good. He's not dropped the set yet. Zverev's actually been coasting. Ended up winning the first match against Puig in straight sets. Beat once again a pretty easy match there in the second round, as he ended up beating Martinez 6-1, 6-4, 6-1. So 2 guys who are really not that great in 2025 on hard court, but still good performances nonetheless. Now for Fernley, faced off against Kyrgios's corpse in the first round, won in straight sets, beat Kaza in 4 in the second round. He's been good too. Solid challenger player. The thing is, do I think Zverev is going to win in straight sets? Because the argument for Zverev minus 2.5 sets at a minus 145 is that he's clearly the better player, and Fernley hasn't really played anybody. So Zverev should get the job done. Now, I think Fernley's a solid player. I think that he definitely has a good, well-rounded game. We did back him against Kyrgios, mainly because Kyrgios we thought couldn't move, and we were right. Fernley played well, though, but I think you're looking at Zverev being the better player, and it seems like his bicep injury is not a factor at all. So Zverev seems to be fully healthy, and that could hurt us in the later rounds for the actual outrights. But for the sake of this matchup, I think I am going to go Zverev in straight sets. Fernley can maybe find a way to win a set, but I think that if you're asking me who I think is the better player by a wide margin, I think Zverev should win in straight sets. You could argue Fernley can find a way to win one. Maybe. I would say no, but I think it might be close. Maybe a breaker in there that comes down to the wire. But for the sake of overall form so far in the event, I think I'll go Zverev in straight sets. I'm not going to bet it, though. If you want to go for value on over 3.5 sets, I'm not going to roast you for it. But I think you're looking at Zverev, who is the better player, and it is a step of competition for Fernley. I do think the Kyrgios win was basically a bye. Kyrgios really just couldn't move, and he kept grabbing his abdomen for the entire match. It just felt like a very good draw for Fernley, and I do think that Zverev's a massive step up, and I think that Zverev will look sharp in this event. So I am going to go with Zverev based on what I've seen so far in the event. He looks completely healthy, good enough for me. I'll go with Zverev in straight sets personally. I might not bet it, but I think you're looking at what should be maybe a competitive set there, maybe a 7-6, or maybe even like a couple 6-4s. But I think Zverev's playing too well right now. Give me him in straight sets. Moving on to the next match. I'm going to go to the matchup between. I think I'm going to skip the Alcaraz match. I just think he kills Borges. I got nothing else to add there. The next match we're going to talk about, though, is the matchup between. You know what? We will go with Draper and Vukic for this one. Draper is a massive favorite. Draper is around minus, what is he, like minus 500 in this one? He's around minus 518. You have Vukic at around 4-1. The spread here is -6 for Draper. The spread for Vukic is +6. The over-under for games is 35.5. For the set spread here, you have Draper to win in straight sets at +125. You have Vukic to win a set at -155. You have the over 3.5 sets at -125. First glance, over 3.5 sets is just insanely mispriced to me. I have no idea how this is -125. Draper's been dropping sets left and right. I don't get this at all. I think you're looking at what should be a bit of a marathon here between these two guys. The home court advantage is in favor of Vukic, who's had a couple marathons, won 5 sets in each of the first 2 rounds. So yes, the argument is fatigue could be an issue, but Draper has also been in a bunch of marathons. He went to 5 against Navone, who's a clay specialist, had a marathon against Kogonakis, that makes sense. Vukic, though, had a marathon against Zoomer, and then had a marathon against Korda. So both guys have gone to a 5th set in every match here. And now over 3.5 sets is -125? Really? That feels like a really bad price. I feel like, or I should say a really off price. Give me the over 3.5 sets. I think Vukic can be very streaky. I get Draper has the overall rally tolerance to outlast Vukic in the rallies, but Vukic has a good first serve. The second serve, not so much. But I think you're looking at a guy with home court advantage against a guy that drops a bunch of sets. Draper is a guy that is very solid, but he does drop a lot of sets. I don't know if I should really compare him to Fees, because Fees never made a Grand Slam semi. But same idea. They're priced like they're going to bury the opposition every time, and they always drop sets. So I do like the over 3.5 sets here at -125. I think that's a very interesting price, and I think it's very affordable. So give me Vukic once again over 3.5 sets against Draper at -125. Give me a close matchup. I think Draper will win based on overall talent, but I wouldn't be shocked if Vukic pulled off the upset. But I think you're looking at Draper being around 5-1. That feels disrespectful. The under 3.5 sets being -105 feels very disrespectful. I think that this should be a closer, I'd say 4 or 5 set match. So I'll go with the over for this one. I think you're looking at what should be a potential marathon. So that's my thoughts on that one. Moving on to the next match we're going to talk about. You have a matchup between, for this one, I think we'll go with Fritz against Monfils. Fritz is a massive favorite here, as Fritz is around -700 or so. You have Monfils at around +500. For the game spread, you have -6 for Fritz, +6 for Monfils. The over-under in games is set at 36. For the set spread here, you have Fees and straight sets at around even money. You have Monfils to win a set at -130. So for the matchup here, both guys have looked good so far in the event. Monfils ended up winning a 5-set marathon in the first round against Pericard. Then he beat Altmaier in the second round. As for Fritz, has looked great. Beat Garin in straight sets, dropping only 3 games, and he ended up beating Brooksby, only dropping 5 games in that one. Head-to-head history, though, face-off in the Australian Open 2019, Fritz did win, but there were 3 tie breaks, and Fritz did win in 4. So Fritz, I think, is going to win. We'll start there. Monfils been a great story. I think his draw has been, once again, interesting. Fritz has been amazing, though, just watching him play. And I do think that Monfils, even though he's played well, massive step up in competition. Fritz is a top 4 player in the world. I think Fritz is a good server. Unlike Pericard, he could actually return. And Monfils had a very favorable draw in the second round, facing off against the clay specialist there in Altmaier. I think Fritz wins. Now, the question is, does Monfils win a set? I feel like Fritz, based on current form, should win in straight sets, but do I think there's value at like even money? I don't know if there is. Like, it's really tough to fully find value for me on this one. I think Monfils can keep it interesting for at least a set, but I think Fritz, for the most part, will just have too much firepower to actually handle. And Fritz has definitely cut down on the unforced errors, which has been an issue for his entire career. So Fritz is starting to look a lot sharper in the long rallies, which is what Monfils wants to specialize in. For this one, though, I think I might go a bit contrarian here. I think I might go Fritz straight sets at even money. I'm not going to bet this, but I do think Fritz is in better form. And Monfils did just win a title. He's looked good here. But I think that Fritz is finding a certain gear to his game in his career that Monfils, I don't think, can keep up with personally. Maybe for one set. That's basically it for me, though. You might get a breaker in here, though, but I think you're looking at Fritz, who I think is the much better player in 2025. Give me Fritz to win in straight sets at even money for the value on that one. Moving on to the next matchup. For this one, we are going to go to the matchup between, we're missing a couple lines, though, for some of these, so just keep that in mind. For the next one, we're going to go to the matchup between, you know what, we will go with Kecmanovic against Rune. And for this one, Rune is around minus 200, and for this one, Kecmanovic is around, trying to find the price here on Kecmanovic. He is around plus 163. Head-to-head history, though, went to 3 sets in Basel back in 2023, and it faced off in Stockholm. Kecmanovic did win in straight sets in Stockholm in 2023. So for this one, I see, once again, another classic Rune match where it goes 4 or 5. We saw Kecmanovic look good in the last match against Hurkacz, winning in straight sets. Went to 5, though, against Ahovic in the first round. Rune, though, does drop a bunch of sets. Dropped a set to Berrettini. Dropped 2 sets to a Zhang. I see a similar match to the Zhang one. Give me a war here. I think you're looking at what should be a close matchup. Think that Rune is on upset alert, though. I think Kecmanovic can get the job done if he's on with the serve. And Rune, I still think it's a head case who can definitely punt sets left and right. For this one, though, I don't mind if you want to go for which guy you think's going to win. You take him to win and both players to win a set. I don't think either guy wins in 3. I think it goes 4 or 5. If you want Rune to win in 4 or 5, you can find a good price on that, and I think that Kecmanovic can keep this interesting. So for this one, give me length. I don't mind the over of 4 games here. I don't mind the over in sets. I think it should be a very fun matchup that can come down to the wire. But Rune has been a marathon guy in Australia for a long time, and I see that happening once again. So if you want to go, for example, for a price on Rune, he's minus 205. If you want Rune to win the match and both players to win a set, you can get plus 152. Plus 152 is a great deal for a minus 200 favorite when you're picking Rune once again to drop sets. That's probably my favorite play in the actual match. Once again, I'm not saying that he's guaranteed to win. Kecmanovic can win, but a minus 200 favorite at plus 150 and change, I think is a great value play. I'll go with that. I will go with the Rune to win the match and both players to win a set at plus 152 on FanDuel as my favorite play in that one. Moving on to the next match we're going to talk about. For this one, going to look at the matchup between, what do I want to go for this one? They just posted the odds for the TN match, but it's pretty tricky against Mutet. It's tough to bet because I don't know what the legs are going to be for TN for that situation because he had a massive 5-hour marathon against Medvedev. And Mutet's not the guy you want to face after that type of marathon, so not the best overall spot for TN. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. I don't have any actual betting thoughts on that one. For this one, though, I'll go with the Mickelson match against Khachanov. Khachanov's minus 149 or so. You have Mickelson at around plus 120. For the actual, I'd say, breakdown of this matchup, faced off before, and you actually saw some success from Mickelson. Mickelson actually, that did not happen. I thought they faced off in the head-to-head. They did not. A point is, though, Khachanov ended up winning in 4 against Diallo, won in straight sets against Manarino. As Mickelson beat Tsitsipas in 4 and beat McCabe in 3. Not a big McCabe guy, though, so I'm not going to overreact too much to that performance. Still a nice win there nonetheless. Now, for the actual matchup here, I think Kashanov's the better player, so I am going to go with him to win. Mickelson, I think, is just not a great server for a guy his height, and I think I'm going to go with the same approach that I had for the match involving Rune. Give me Mickelson to lose, but him to win a set. So give me Kashanov to win the match and both players to win a set at plus 164. I'm getting the favorite at minus 150, whatever. Saving about $2+, plus 164 is a great price. I think Kashanov is better. I think it might be a 4 or 5 set marathon. It should be close, though. I just think that Kashanov's a bit better, and I do think that Kashanov's serve is better, and that might be the deciding factor. Mickelson can still be a head case at times. He's definitely, I'd say, a pretty solid rally guy, but the shot selection can be a bit, I'd say, questionable, and that might be what comes up in this one. Give me Kashanov, though, in this one, and both players win a set at plus 164. Bit of common theme, though, the event, though. A lot of matches have ended in 4 or 5. So you've really not seen many straight set dominations, and I think you might end up seeing a lot of value in that market moving forward in the event. Besides that, though, I think if there's anything else I want to cover. Once again, I am saving a couple matches for the lock and dog pick, so I did skip over those. Thing that's going to do it, though, for this one, if you want to go for one more, actually, I'll go with the Musetti match against Shelton. That'll be the last one I actually cover for this episode. So for this one, Shelton's minus 155. You have Musetti at plus 135. For the game spread, you have minus 2 for Shelton, plus 2 for Musetti. The over in games is set at 40.5. For the set spread, you have Musetti to win a set at, or I'll put it this way. Musetti is basically guaranteed to win a set based on the pricing. For him to win in straight sets, though, that's plus 500. For Sheldon to win straight sets, you can find that at plus 325. Sheldon minus 1 net sets, though, is plus 130. You have Musetti to win 2 sets is minus 160. The over 3.5 sets is minus 205. Now, they face off 2 times. One time in Miami, one time in London. So one grass meeting, one hard court meeting. And you saw Musetti win both. And Musetti did beat Sheldon on hard court last year in Miami. Sheldon looked good, though, for the most part. Beat Nakashima in straight sets and ended up beating Busta in 4. Musetti, though, looked great against Shapo, winning in straight sets, couple breakers, and ended up beating Arnaldi in 4 in that one. However, Musetti being 2-0 in the head-to-head does tell me that Shelton might be an upset award here. I think that Shelton is, once again, a solid Australian Open player, but you're looking at Musetti, who's really been sharp. And I think that you're looking at Musetti with his overall, I'd say, form right now. Shelton, I think, will be on the ropes. So I like the over in this one. I think you get at least one breaker here. I think you're looking at what should be a very, very close matchup, but I think you're looking at a very, very interesting match that could be won by either guy. Shelton does have a better serve, but I think Musetti's got more consistency. That might be enough for me, honestly. I'll go with the upset. I'll go with Musetti to get the job done here at plus 135. I think Shelton, once again, can win it. I'm not going to tell you right now that Musetti is guaranteed to win the match. But based on the actual form, I think Shelton in that, I'd say, final set and a half against Busta kind of took his foot off the gas, and I'm just concerned about him once again kind of going through a set nonchalantly and potentially blowing a break potentially. So I'll go with Musetti in this one. Think that he's been pretty solid. Shelton can volley, doesn't do it that much. So Musetti's deep return position shouldn't really hurt him in this one. I'll go with Musetti in this one for the value at plus money. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the preview of the third round. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Fantasy because they have a lot of good items in their pick menu. They have a lot of ways to win as well. They profit boost and gimme pick'ems, NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and tennis, and more. A reminder, you can also use specials and boosts on our Flex entries. For my entry for this one, I think I am going to go to the NFL card for the upcoming weekend. And for this one, you know what? I think I'll go with something a bit different here. I am going to go with Jaden Daniels' rushing yards in this one. I think that they're looking at him being able to run against the Lions. They've not really been good against mobile quarterbacks this season, and I do think that Daniels should use his legs in this one. I think Jaden Daniels higher on his rushing yards in this matchup. Reminder, though, when you sign for your new account, use the promo code SGPN to claim a special first time buzz at all for up to 1K bonus cash on a fancy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished previewing the third round of the Australian Open. Now it's time for the lock and the dog picks. For the lock in this one, I am going to go to the Djokovic and Makic match, and I am going to go with the over 35.5 games here at minus 116 on FanDuel. Joker's been winning. However, he's not been looking that great. He's dropped a set in each of his last 3 matches. We saw him lose to Opelka in the last event that he played in before the Australian Open. Coincidentally, Makic did beat Opelka, so there we go. Point is, though, a Joker did drop a set in the first 2 rounds, one to Basaveretti and one to Faria. So 2 guys that Joker, I'd say, in his normal prime, would have buried in straight sets, but unfortunately for him, he's just not that guy anymore. Makic, though, has lost at least 1 set in 7 of 9. Now, he's been playing good tennis, but he does not exactly win comfortably. Joker should win at least 1 set, obviously. Makic, though, has a very good serve, and I think that he can definitely keep Joker's returning game at bay for a couple sets. And Joker's serve has really not been that great so far in the event. So I think Makic can find some openings. He won't be intimidated because we saw him beat Alcaraz last year. He also has given Joker some problems in the past. He beat Joker last year on clay in 3 sets, and they faced off one time on hard court in Dubai back in 2023, and Joker did win in a 3rd set breaker. So Makic has won at least 1 set in each of the 2 head-to-head meetings. So based on that, I don't see Joker coasting. I see a very tough match, actually, for Joker. But he ended up having a tough set or 2 against Basaveretti, had a tough set against Faria, which he lost. I think Makic can win at least 1 set. This might go 5, actually. I can see it being a very close matchup, but 35.5 feels very low. You don't even need 4 sets, actually. You can potentially get this with 2 breakers and a 6-4. So you can still win this in a very competitive 3 sets. But I think you're looking at a pretty competitive head-to-head where each match did not end in straight sets. Makic is a pretty solid player. Very good serve. Joker's been vulnerable, dropping sets in the first 2 rounds. I think it's a pretty solid spot to bet an over. Give me a close match here. The over 3.5 sets, I think, was like minus 135. But I do think at the end of the day, with Makic being that good of a server and with Joker, who I think will serve pretty well for most of the match in terms of holding, I don't see many blowout sets. I think each set should have at least 9 games in it. So once again, 35.5. If you do think you're looking at 4 or 5 sets, I took the games instead, trying to save about 20 cents. But give me the over in this one. I think Joker might win, but I think he also might once again be involved in a war. So I think that 35.5 is too low for games. I am going to go with the over in this one. For the dog, though, I am going to go with a parlay once again. We did end up winning the over 3.5 sets parlay for the last episode. I'll do it again for this one. I'm going to go with a couple of, I'd say, usual suspects here. First of all, I am going to go with Fees in his match against Humbert. Probably the match of the round, at least based on overall ranking and based on talent. For this one, though, I'll go with the over 3.5 sets in that one. Parlayed with the Fekina and Mensik match over 3.5 sets, and that 2-pick pays out a plus 133 on FanDuel. Now, 6 of Fees' last 8 matches did not end in straight sets. Said this before. Fees does win matches, but he tends to make it difficult on himself, and he has dropped a set in each of the first 2 rounds here. So based on that, Humbert, we know, is a very solid player as well. They have been in pretty interesting, I'd say, form lately. Humbert's not dropped a set yet, but he hasn't really played anybody. To go through the path here for Humbert, he really has coasted because he hasn't played anybody worth a damn. So to get into the actual path here for Humbert, looking at his opponents here, ended up beating the likes of Habib in the second round, ended up beating Gigante, a qualifier, in the first round. Not easy, though. A 7-6, 7-5, 6-4. So he had basically 2 qualifiers in the first 2 rounds. So I think that even though Humbert's not dropped a set yet, pretty decent step up of competition, and I do think that Fees will win at least 1 set in this matchup. But you're looking at the overall history here. 2 of the 3 hardcourt meetings in their careers didn't end in straight sets. They had a war last year in the Tokyo final, which Fees actually won. Only career head-to-head meeting, but it went to 3 sets. Was really chaotic. Point is, though, I think each guy has a moment here. I think 3.5 sets is a very solid parlay leg. Give me, in my opinion, Humbert winning, but I think that it's going to go 4 or 5. I'll go with that in the parlay. Give me the over 3.5 sets for that one. For the other one, Mensik, I feel like I don't have to explain it because I take the over 3.5 sets on Mensik in every single round, and it hits every time. So get into the actual, I'd say, bullet points for the matchup here. Mensik has not had a match end in straight sets in 5 straight. 5 straight matches not ending in straight sets. So he's a marathon man. It's what he is. We saw that cash in the last episode with the Rude match. Fekina, though, has lost at least 1 set in 6 of the last 9. Had a 5-set marathon against Felix in the last round. Good stamina, though, so I think he should be fine. Point is, though, I think you're seeing a close matchup here. 2 career hardcore meetings. They split them at 1-1. I see a pretty standard Mensik match where maybe he wins in 4 or 5, but he's been dropping sets left and right. Fekina has 2, dropping at least 1 set in 6 of the last 9. I see it coming together for an absolute war in both cases. So I am going to go with the over 3.5 sets in that one. So once again, the plays here for the third round on the men's side for the lock and dog. The lock's going to be on the over 35.5 games in the Joker and Makic match at minus 116. That's on FanDuel. And for the dog, I am going to go with the 3.5 set parlay again. I'm going to go with the Fees match over 3.5 sets parlayed with the Mensik match over 3.5 sets, and that pays out at a plus 133 on FanDuel. That's going to wrap it up. This episode of Run Back once again for the 4th round, or in other words, the round of 16 of this round open. Until next time, follow me on Twitter at Reichel Radio, follow me on the NBA show, follow me on the MLB show as well. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.